The four special segments in a triangle that we've studied so far are the median, which connects a vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side, the angle bisector, which connects a vertex to the opposite side, bisecting the vertex angle, the altitude, which connects from a vertex to the opposite side, creating a perpendicular segment, and the perpendicular bisector. The fifth special segment of a triangle is called the midsegment. The midsegment connects a midpoint to another midpoint. So we find the midpoint of one of our sides and the midpoint of another side and connect those two midpoints to create the midsegment. The midsegment has three properties. The first property deals with the length of the midsegment. To look at its length, I'm going to create an analogy with two different tests. Let's say that on test 1 you score a 0, and on test 2 you score 100. Your average score is going to be halfway between 0 and 100. The average score is going to be 50. Let's say we have triangle A, B, C, and M is the midpoint of AB, and N is the midpoint of BC. Then MN is going to be a midsegment. And if AC has a length of 100, we can think of this triangle as this analogy. AC is 100, and the length of B is actually 0. It's a point. It has no width. So the average of 100 and 0 is 50. In other words, the measure of a midsegment, in this case MN, is equal to 1/2 the measure of the opposite side. Or, if I think about it the other way, the measure of the side is equal to twice the measure of the midsegment. Property 2. If we have a midsegment then that midsegment is going to be parallel to the opposite side. And parallel segments, parallel lines, tell me about angles. Namely, this angle is congruent to this angle. Well, why are these two angles congruent? Well, if you look, they're actually corresponding angles cut by this transversal. And corresponding angles between two parallel lines will be congruent. We also have this angle congruent to this angle. So from property 2, the midsegment being parallel, we know that the corresponding angles are congruent. And the last property. If I find the midpoint of all of the sides of a triangle, and I connect all of those midpoints, my midsegments don't intersect. And if I look at the length of this midsegment, it's going to be half of the length of this side. Well, half of the length of this side is 1 tick mark long. And if I look at this midsegment, the measure of this midsegment is going to be half of the measure of this side. Or if I look, this midsegment will be 3 tick marks long. And if I look at this midsegment, it's going to be half of this side, and half of this side is 2 tick marks. So if I look carefully, I have 1, 2, 3 congruent triangles, and I actually have a 4th congruent triangle in the middle here. So if I make all 3 midsegments of my triangle, I actually end up with 4 congruent triangles by side, side, side.